Happy New Year, everyone. Wishing you all the best in the year ahead. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting content. Cheers. 7 years ago, I learned how quickly a mundane moment can twist into something unforgettable and terrifying. I was 26 then, working a dull office job and spending my free time trying to figure out what I wanted from life. That New Year's Day, I had planned to sleep off the champagne-induced headache from the night before, but instead I found myself driving home in the early hours, heading back to my quiet apartment after a last-minute party in the next town over. The fog was thick that morning, so dense it felt like I was driving through a ghost town. The world outside my windshield had been reduced to gray silhouettes, streetlights, fences, and the occasional vague outline of a house. The highway stretched ahead like a ribbon of uncertainty, and the only sounds were the hum of my engine and the faint static of the radio I'd forgotten to turn off. Around 3 a.m., I saw the figure. At first, I thought I was imagining things. The fog warped everything, making trees and signs look like people standing in the middle of the road. But as my car drew closer, I realized it really was a person, a man, wearing a thick jacket and waving his arms frantically. I slowed down. It was instinctual, almost automatic. Who wouldn't? A lone figure, stranded in the middle of nowhere on New Year's morning, in weather like this. My first thought was that he'd broken down, or maybe hit a deer. But as I pulled over to the shoulder, doubt crept in. He approached quickly, his boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. The faint glow of my headlights illuminated his face. He looked haggard, with a scruffy beard and eyes that darted nervously between me and the road. I rolled down my window a crack just enough to hear him over the idling engine. "Hey, thank God you stopped," he said, his breath clouding in the cold air. His voice was shaky, frantic, as if he'd been running or shouting for hours. "I need help. My car's back there, won't start. Can you give me a ride to town?" Something about his tone gave me pause. It wasn't just desperation, it was something darker. He wasn't asking for help, he was demanding it. Still, I couldn't just leave him there. "Town's about 20 minutes back," I said, trying to sound calm. "You sure there's no one else you can call?" "No service out here," he replied quickly, almost snapping. He gestured behind him, back toward the stretch of foggy highway I'd just driven through. "Come on, man, please. I've been out here for hours." Against my better judgment, I unlocked the passenger door. He climbed in without hesitation, slamming the door behind him and exhaling like he'd just escaped a burning building. "Thanks," he muttered, his voice softer now. "You have no idea." The first few minutes of the drive were quiet. He didn't say much, and I didn't press him. He smelled faintly of sweat and gasoline, and his jacket looked like it had seen better days. I glanced at him occasionally, trying not to stare, but something about him felt strange. His eyes were darting around, scanning the road ahead, the dashboard, even me, like he was waiting for something. "So," I began, breaking the silence, "what happened to your car?" He hesitated just for a second. "Battery died," he said flatly. "Guess I left the lights on too long." It wasn't convincing. His tone was too rehearsed, too matter-of-fact. But I didn't push it. The sooner I dropped him off, the better. About 5 minutes later, the fog thickened again, swallowing the road ahead. My headlights barely cut through it, and I slowed down to a crawl, leaning forward like that would somehow help me see better. That's when I noticed him staring at my hands. "You sure you're going the right way?" he asked abruptly. "Yeah," I said, glancing at him. "Town's straight ahead. It's the only road out here." "No, I mean," he shifted in his seat, suddenly agitated. "I don't think this is the right way. You're supposed to turn back there." "What are you talking about? There was no turn." "There was," he snapped, his voice rising. "You missed it. Just stop the car." I froze. My hands tightened on the wheel, my foot hovering over the brake. Something was wrong. "No," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I'm not stopping. The road goes straight to town. We'll get there soon." He leaned forward, his face inches from mine. "Stop the car," he growled. The fear hit me like a punch to the gut. My instincts screamed at me to keep driving, but my heart was racing and my palms were slick with sweat. I slowed down slightly, cautious of the fog ahead, but my mind was racing. What was his plan? Rob me? Attack me? Without warning, he yanked the door handle and jumped out. I swerved slightly as the door swung open, cold air rushing in. I hit the brakes reflexively, my tires skidding slightly on the slick road. Through my rearview mirror, I saw him tumbling onto the shoulder, his figure quickly disappearing into the fog. My heart pounded as I realized what he had just done. He'd risked his life, jumping out of a moving car on a foggy highway where another vehicle could have easily struck him. I didn't stop. Instead, I hit the gas and drove, my hands trembling on the wheel. The man's reckless escape had made it clear he was far more dangerous than I'd realized. It wasn't until I reached town that I finally let myself breathe. I pulled into a gas station, parked, and sat there for what felt like hours, trying to calm my racing heart. The police didn't find him. I reported everything, his description, the location, even the foggy stretch of road. They searched the area, but found no car, no broken down vehicle, and no sign of the man. To this day, I don't know what he wanted, or why he tried to get me to stop. All I know is if I had, I might not be here to tell the story. 7 years later, I still drive that same stretch of road every once in a while, but I've never seen that dirt road or the man again. It's been 5 years, and I still can't step into an office after sunset. Even now, when I hear the hum of fluorescent lights or the distant whir of an air conditioning unit, my pulse quickens and my chest tightens. It's irrational, I know. But after what happened that night, rationality doesn't comfort me anymore. It was New Year's Eve 2019. I was working for a firm called Lennox & Co., a corporate grindhouse that demanded as much from its employees as it did from its coffee machines. Constant output, no matter the cost. Back then, I was eager to climb the ladder, desperate to prove myself. When my boss casually mentioned that he needed a report done before the first of the year, I volunteered without hesitation. By 7 p.m., the office was deserted. Everyone else had long since left to join friends, family, or even strangers to welcome the new year. But not me. I stayed behind, determined to finish the report. The silence was a relief at first. Without the usual chatter, ringing phones, and tapping keyboards, I thought I could finally focus. I remember glancing at the clock around 9:45 p.m., thinking I'd be out before midnight. But as the hours ticked by, I found myself drifting into a haze of exhaustion. The only sound was the faint hum of the building's ventilation system. At 11:15 p.m., I heard the chime of the elevator. The sound made me pause. The elevators required a key card after hours, and I hadn't used mine. The cleaning crew always finished by 9 p.m., and the building's security stayed near the lobby. I stood up and walked to the edge of my cubicle, peering toward the hallway where the elevator was. The indicator light showed the elevator had stopped on my floor. The doors opened. I waited, heart pounding, for someone to step out, but no one did. The elevator stood empty for a few moments before the doors slid shut again. I told myself it was just a glitch, a harmless malfunction. Machines aren't perfect. Still, the unease settled deep in my chest. I tried to push the thought aside and returned to my desk. Then, about 5 minutes later, I heard the sound of footsteps. They weren't coming from the office, but from the stairwell, faint at first, then louder as they grew closer. Someone was climbing the stairs. I froze, listening. The footsteps were deliberate, unhurried. My floor was the 6th, so whoever it was had taken their time. The sound stopped abruptly. No door opened. No one entered the floor. The silence that followed was almost deafening, pressing in on me like a weight. I stood up again, creeping toward the glass door that led to the stairwell. I couldn't see anyone through the narrow window, but the hairs on my neck stood on end. Then, just as suddenly, the footsteps started again, descending this time. They were steady, retreating with the same deliberate pace. By then, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed up my things, determined to leave. Whatever was happening, I didn't want to stick around to find out. I pressed the elevator button, glancing nervously toward the stairwell door. The elevator arrived with its cheerful chime, and I stepped inside, hitting the button for the lobby. The ride down started smoothly. I kept my eyes on the panel, watching the numbers count down. 6, 5. Then the elevator stopped on the 4th floor. The doors slid open, revealing a dark hallway. The overhead lights were off, leaving the floor shrouded in shadow. I leaned forward slightly, peering out into the void. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice shaky. At first, there was no response. The silence was thick, oppressive. Then, from far down the hallway, I heard it, footsteps. They started softly but grew louder, faster, as if someone was running toward the elevator. My blood turned to ice. I stabbed the closed door button repeatedly, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they seemed just steps away. The doors slid shut just as the sound reached the elevator. I stood frozen, my heart hammering in my chest as the elevator continued its descent. I didn't dare move until the doors opened again, this time to the safety of the lobby. I stumbled out of the elevator, my legs unsteady. The security guard at the front desk looked up from his phone, his expression shifting to concern. "You okay?" he asked. "There's someone in the building," I said, my voice trembling. The guard frowned. "No, there isn't. The building's locked down. Nobody gets in without clearance." "I heard them," I insisted. "On the stairs, and the fourth floor, someone was there." The guard gave me a skeptical look, but reached for his radio. "I'll check it out." "I'm not waiting," I said quickly. "I'm going home." He started to say something, but I was already heading for the door. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but I didn't stop until I reached my car. I came back to the office after the holiday, determined to act as though nothing had happened. Nothing strange occurred again, but I couldn't shake the memory of that night. Who or what was in that building with me? Even now, I'll never know, and maybe that's for the best. It wasn't the most exciting way to spend New Year's Eve, but I'd promised my friends I'd be the designated driver. No drinking, no partying, just me, a thermos of coffee, and the responsibility of getting everyone home safe. By 1 a.m., the party was winding down. My car was already packed with my 4 friends, Liam, Kat, Marcus, and Jenna. They were loud, drunk, and glowing with the buzz of fireworks and champagne. I was tired, but the thought of a quiet ride home once they were dropped off kept me going. "Let's get moving," I said, sliding into the driver's seat. The streets were dark and mostly empty, save for the occasional car pulling out of driveways or a lone pedestrian weaving their way home. The cold air outside made the windows fog up slightly, so I turned on the defrost and eased onto the road. We were on the outskirts of town when I noticed the car. It was subtle at first, just a pair of headlights in my rearview mirror. Nothing unusual about that. But as we turned onto a quieter stretch of road, those headlights stayed unnervingly close, almost glued to my bumper. "Someone's in a hurry," I muttered. "What's that?" Liam asked from the back seat, his words slurred. "Nothing," I said, trying to ignore the creeping tension in my gut. I tapped the brakes lightly, hoping the driver would back off. Instead, they honked, a short, angry burst, and moved even closer. Kat turned around, squinting at the car. "What's their problem?" "No idea," I said, gripping the wheel tighter. I turned onto an even narrower road, hoping they'd pass, but the car stayed behind us. Their headlights were so bright now that my mirrors were blinding. "This is ridiculous," Marcus said, leaning forward. "Just let them pass." I slowed down, pulling as far to the side as I could without leaving the road. The car slowed with me, their engine growling like a threat. "What the hell?" Jenna whispered. "Okay, I'm just gonna stop," I said, pulling over completely. The other car stopped too, a few feet behind us. "All right, that's creepy," Liam said, suddenly more sober. I waited, staring at the rearview mirror, my heart thudding in my chest. The other car's engine idled, its headlights still piercing through the dark. Then they turned off their lights. "What are they doing?" Kat whispered. I didn't answer. My hand hovered over the gear shift. After a few seconds, the headlights flicked back on, and the car roared forward. But instead of passing us, they swerved sharply, blocking the road ahead. "Okay, this isn't funny," Marcus said. "No kidding," I muttered, shifting into reverse. The wheels spun slightly on the icy pavement, but I managed to back up enough to turn the car around. The other car didn't follow immediately. For a moment, I thought we'd gotten away. But as soon as I picked up speed, their headlights reappeared in the distance, growing brighter and brighter as they gained on us. "They're following us again," Jenna shouted. "I see that," I said through gritted teeth. I pressed the accelerator, my car protesting as it climbed past the speed limit. The road was winding and slick, bordered by thick patches of forest. If I lost control, we'd be in a ditch, or worse. The other car's engine roared, and they began tailing us again, closer this time. My friends were panicking now, shouting suggestions. Take a sharp turn. Find a driveway. Call the cops. Who has service out here? Liam snapped, holding up his phone with 0 bars. I spotted a side road up ahead and veered onto it without signaling, hoping to shake them. The path was narrow and barely maintained, branches scraping against the sides of the car as I sped through. The headlights behind us disappeared for a moment. I think we lost them, Marcus said, exhaling shakily. But just as I started to believe him, the lights reappeared. The other car had followed us onto the side road. They're not giving up, Jenna whimpered. Hold on, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The side road opened up into a clearing, a small snow-covered lot with nowhere to go but back the way we came. I cursed under my breath and slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop. The other car pulled in behind us, blocking the exit. What do we do? Kat asked, her voice trembling. I didn't have an answer. My heart was pounding as I watched the other car. The driver didn't get out. They just sat there, their headlights illuminating our car like a spotlight. We can't stay here, Liam said. Yeah, thanks for that, I snapped, trying to think. Suddenly the driver's door opened. A figure stepped out, a man in a dark jacket, his face obscured by the glare of the lights. Lock the doors, I said. Already did, Jenna whispered, her hands shaking. The man stood still for a moment, then started walking toward us, slowly, deliberately. Go, Marcus shouted. I slammed the car into reverse, spinning the wheel hard. The tires struggled for traction, but I managed to angle us back toward the road. The man broke into a sprint, reaching for the passenger side door. Kat screamed as he slammed his hand against the window, his face now visible, a pale, furious mask twisted with rage. I hit the gas, the car lurching forward. The man stumbled back, and we tore out of the clearing. The other car's engine roared to life behind us, its headlights closing in once again. My friends were shouting, but I barely heard them over the blood rushing in my ears. The road ahead was a blur of snow and darkness. I took turns at random, hoping to lose them. Each time they followed, relentless. Finally, we hit a straight stretch of road, and I saw lights in the distance. Streetlights, maybe a small town. We're almost there, I shouted, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. The other car was right on our tail, their horn blaring like a warning. But as we reached the edge of town, they abruptly slowed, turning off onto a side street. I didn't stop driving until we reached a gas station, its bright lights feeling like salvation. We stumbled out of the car, shaking and pale. The attendant inside looked at us like we were crazy, but I didn't care. We called the police, but without a license plate or a clear description of the driver, there wasn't much they could do. Even now, days later, I can't shake the feeling of those headlights behind me. I keep wondering what would have happened if I'd pulled over, or if I hadn't driven fast enough. New Year's Eve was supposed to be about fresh starts and celebration. Instead, it became the night I'll never forget. The night a stranger turned a simple drive home into a nightmare.